Hey, welcome back again, and we get to have a fun time, hopefully, as we're going through the story of God in the series that we're calling Echo, listening for the voice of God in the story of God. Recap, we're doing this in a sequential order. So we started off with creation of the first humans, then we talked about the separation that happened between God's creation and himself. Then we got into the individual stories of the people of God, with Cain and Abel. Then we went through Noah and the flood. We went through the covenant and Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Esau. And today we get to Joseph, another famous story that people like to make musicals about or movies because it's a powerful story. In my Hebrew class, we did the story of Joseph and interpreted it. It was really cool. Hey, this is the story of Joseph. This is for our junior high rooted, our senior high starting line, and anyone else who wants to learn about the story of God. Stay tuned, here we go. This is the story of Joseph, found in Genesis 37 to 39 and 41 to 50. If you remember last time, Jacob's name was changed to Israel. Israel and his 12 sons now lived in the promised land. Out of all his sons, Israel loved Joseph the most and made him a beautiful coat with long sleeves. When Joseph was only 17, he helped his brothers tend the cattle and reported to his father anything they did wrong. Joseph's brothers, they grew actually to hate him because he was their father's favorite. They hated him even more when he told them that he had dreams about the future where he saw all of them bowing down to him. One day, Joseph went to check on his brothers and they grabbed him. They ripped off his beautiful coat and they threw him into a deep hole. Then the brothers decided to sell Joseph to slave traders who were passing by on their way to Egypt. They tore up their brother's coat, they soaked it in goat's blood, and they brought it to their father saying, "We found this in the field. It's Joseph, isn't it?" Israel examined it and he said, "Yes, this is my son's coat. A wild animal must have attacked and eaten him." He began to weep, saying, "I will mourn my son's death until the day I die." Meanwhile, the slave traders sold Joseph to a man named Potiphar. He was the head guard for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Potiphar noticed that God was with Joseph and blessed everything that he did. So he promoted him, putting him in charge of his entire household and his businesses. Now Joseph was a young, handsome man, and Potiphar's wife began to desire him. She constantly pressured him to sleep with her, but Joseph refused, saying that would be a terrible thing and a great sin against God. One night after Potiphar got home, his wife told him, "The Hebrew slave you brought me here, he tried to rape me." Potiphar became furious and he threw Joseph into the king's prison. But God gave him favor with the head of the jailer. God was with Joseph, continuing to be his success in everything that he did. And before long, Joseph was put in charge of the other prisoners and everything that happened there. God also gave Joseph the ability to interpret the other prisoners' dreams. A few years later, Pharaoh had some dreams that had troubled him. In one of them, he saw 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 thin cows. None of Pharaoh's wisest men could interpret what this meant. One of the servants who had been in prison with Joseph told Pharaoh about his ability to interpret dreams. So Pharaoh had Joseph brought to him and asked, "Can you really interpret dreams?" Joseph replied, "That's beyond me, but God will tell you what your dreams mean and ease your worry." Pharaoh shared his dreams and Joseph interpreted them, saying, "For the next 7 years, Egypt will have an abundance of food, and this will be followed by 7 years of a terrible famine that will spread over the land. The king was so impressed with Joseph that he put him in charge of everything in Egypt, second in power only to Pharaoh himself. During the next 7 years, Joseph traveled throughout Egypt, making sure that plenty of food was being stored up in each city. Joseph was only 30 years at the time. 7 years passed and the famine came, spreading throughout the world. People from all over the land came to Egypt to buy food from Joseph. When Israel realized his family was running out of food, he sent his sons to Egypt. And when the brothers arrived to buy food, they didn't recognize Joseph and bowed down before him. Joseph did not tell them who he was until later. At first, Joseph was harsh with his brothers, even accusing them of being spies and putting them in prison. Later, after many meetings and 2 journeys by his brothers, Joseph finally revealed who he was. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold as a slave." The brothers stood there speechless, shocked and afraid. They would never have thought that Joseph could still be alive. But Joseph spoke to them kindly, and he said, "Don't be afraid. Your evil that you have done to me, God is turning that into something good. He put me in this high position so that I could save the lives of many people. Now, I will take care of you and your families." When Pharaoh heard that Joseph's brothers had come, he invited Israel and his entire family to live in Egypt. He gave them a plot of his best land, plenty of food, and new clothing. So the family of Israel came to live in Egypt, escaping the drought and enjoying the blessings that God had given to Joseph. The story of Joseph. Wow, you know I like this story. This story has cows in it. This is an ultimate farmer's story. It's the story of God. And it's told through storytellers who basically, like me, are trying to help us to see through the story of Joseph, what is God telling us? So what do we learn about Joseph and his brothers from this story? There's a lot to learn about this. Why did Joseph's brothers not like him? And the simple answers, yes, are there, but dig a little deeper. And Joseph himself, what is it that we can learn from him? There's a lot there. How did Joseph respond in the difficult situations that he faced? Thrown into the pit, or made fun of first by his brothers, accused falsely by Potiphar's wife. There's a lot of things that Joseph had to face. How did he deal with those? And do you think that his response was realistic? Was it helpful? Okay, this is going to all tie in here. How does God continue his promise to the Hebrews in this story? Think about that for a moment. What does God teach us? What does the story teach us about God? And again, if we're not looking for this in every story of the Word of God, then we're missing out. God reveals himself over and over and over again. And it connected to our previous stories. And of course there is. Many times we're learning and an understanding of what God is trying to say to us. This time, and I say this every time, it's a time to hear, but again, to really listen to what is the story of God. What is, again, the name of the series, this echo that's reverberating out through the generations. Who is God? What is it like to follow him? What does it mean that he's provided a way of salvation? I'm not giving anything away. He provided a way through. He provided salvation for his chosen people through a famine. And it was all because of the obedience of one person. Make sure that you're constantly looking for God in all of these stories, but just make sure you're looking for God. Again, check out our website, contact me, get together with our youth on Sundays mornings in this time, Friday nights, and of course during the week in small groups, where we want to have an opportunity to know who God is and what He's done. See you next time.